I am delighted to bring this very important bill before the Seanad this evening. I believe that it represents an important step forward in the pursuit of equality and justice for all of our citizens. As a constitutional Republican party, Fianna Fáil has always been committed to fighting discrimination in all of its forms. And this bill that I'm presenting now essentially seeks to tackle hate crimes in an effective and robust manner. Only yesterday we saw the Irish Times reporting the fact that the UN Rapporteur on the Elimination of Discrimination in Ireland stated that hate crime legislation needs to be introduced as soon as possible to address the escalation in racially motivated crimes and to help build a safer society. And of course this week is Stand Up Awareness Week, which calls for all of us to take a stand against homophobic and transphobic bullying. It is a sad reality that hate crime is a real and lasting problem in Ireland today, and that our legislation is sadly lacking. Ireland stands alone among European nations in not having introduced statutory protections from hate crime. If the harm of hate is to be acknowledged and countered, it falls on us as legislators to act to provide a legislative framework for the explicit naming of bias crime. Ireland must join other nations in ensuring that the violence of hate experienced by vulnerable individuals and communities is challenged head-on. Individual victims are all too aware of the reasons that they've been targeted. It is for the worst of reasons: the colour of a person's skin, their ethnicity, their religion, their immigration status, their gender, their age, their disability, their gender identity or sexuality. These reasons are diverse in nature, but they all share one commonality. The victim of a hate crime has been targeted for their identity. Victims of hate crime cannot simply assert that their experience was an unlucky occurrence, the wrong place, the wrong time. Instead, they are forced to accept that their social identity was targeted and they remain at risk of repeated victimisation. Ireland has become a far more diverse and inclusive society in recent decades. Irish people of differing race and religion, Irish travellers, LGBTQ persons and persons with disabilities have all become more visible and engaged with our political processes. This diversity is a strength. Sadly, not everyone has welcomed these changes. In fact, some see this strength as a threat to them and are willing to engage in violence to continue that exclusion. We are all too aware of what that looks like. We think of Shelley Cheong pushed into the Royal Canal due to her race. Sean Manelli, a 15-year-old boy, attacked in Eamon Cant Park for the colour of his skin. A young gay couple, Anthony and Garode, attacked and stabbed in Newbridge because of their sexuality only 100 yards from my own home. We have also seen the arson attacks on direct provision centres, the vandalisation of a mosque in Galway. This list is only a few examples of some of the events that have taken place in the recent past. Each of us will also be aware of other cases in which victims felt that they could not speak out or which did not receive the same level of prominence for various reasons. In a society which expands principles of inclusivity and diversity, which was founded on the idea that all people should be cherished equally, these experiences are simply unacceptable. It is the responsibility of the legislature to send a clear message to society that this behaviour is not going to be tolerated. It is then the responsibility of the criminal justice system to ensure that this message is operative and functional. By adopting this bill's legislative proposals, we can provide tools that society needs to combat criminal expressions of hatred, hostility, prejudice, bias and contempt. The human rights of those living in Ireland are being violated on a daily basis in a manner which is deeply damaging to both individuals and society. In the absence of an adequate criminal justice response to hate crime offenders, victims continue to pay for these crimes. Studies have provided convincing evidence that victims of hate crimes suffer more severely than victims of equivalent crimes which are not associated with targeted hostility. Those who have experienced hate offences report a wider range of negative psychological impacts, which also last longer than those exhibited by victims of non-hate parallel offences. The 2016 census established the fact that diversity is now a concrete fact of life for Ireland. Shifting patterns of immigration have changed the racial, ethnic and religious composition of Irish society, and as I said, this change in society has not been welcomed by all, and for some, diversity represents a threat to Irishness, to a threat that frequently meets with violent opposition. Those involved in representing minority communities have been highlighting concerns in recent years over the rise in the number of hate crimes occurring in Ireland, and these, of course, are under-recorded and under-reported. I also refer to the Burning Issues 2 report, which was based on a national survey of over 2,600 LGBT people and 10 focus groups. The key issue and priority for them was the need to introduce hate crime legislation. The bill that I brought forward in the Dáil, together with former Deputy Margaret Murphy O'Mahony in 2016, received cross-party support in the Dáil. And this also went to pre-legislative scrutiny at committee level, and there it stayed because of inactivity. The fact that we have not had a 2-hour debate about hate crime in 4 years in Leinster House speaks volumes. There is an onus on the government to get its act together and to stop dragging its feet on this. We cannot, in good conscience, wait another 4 years for solutions and another debate. The delay in legislating for hate crimes is inexcusable and only serves to discourage people from reporting such crimes. The purpose of this bill is to make provision in law for hate crime against persons based on an individual's asylum or refugee status, race, colour, religion, nationality, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, transgender identity, sex characteristics, age or perceived age. It provides that a crime may be aggravated by hate if at the time of committing the offence or immediately before or after doing so, a person displays hate crime. Sorry about this. If the offence is motivated wholly or partly by racist, homophobic, xenophobic, anti-religious prejudice or disability hate crime towards a relevant individual. Where it can be demonstrated that an offence has been motivated by hate, this bill would ensure that it is labelled clearly as such. Those guilty of that offence would be liable to the penalty that can be imposed for the commission of said offence. It would also provide for those who commit hate crime to receive counselling to address their prejudice. The bill refers the offences to which it will apply criminal damage, public order, theft and fraud, rape and sexual assaults, offences and assault. I acknowledge that there is wide support generally for the principle of criminalising hate crime across the House to those that I have spoken to. I also acknowledge that members of this House may well indeed have proposals to strengthen and indeed improve this legislation, and I want to state very clearly that I am willing to work with senators on this legislation to ensure that it is as strong as it can be. Those who may be the victim of such a crime deserve the support of any who are willing to work with me to improve this legislation. I believe that I have shown through attempts in the last Dáil term that I am committed to addressing this issue, and certainly am willing to engage with others who have proposals. And I particularly want to mention Senator Eileen Flynn, who has assured me of her support, and I look forward to working with her. I do, Minister, wish to acknowledge that Government has made commitments to address this problem. I know the Programme for Government has committed to introducing legislation to tackle both hate crime and hate speech. I just regretted that it wasn't on the priority legislation